a huge variety of subjects including Module 2, ISO and Quality Management Standards. ISO is the International Organization for Standardization, which publishes agreed standards for a huge variety of subjects including materials, products and test methods. It also publishes standards relating to quality management systems. These standards contain a number of requirements which provide assurance of the quality of work being performed and form the basis for continual improvement. These requirements underpin the concept of quality assurance, which ISO defines as part of management focused on providing confidence that quality requirements will be fulfilled. It should be noted that a well-established and effective quality management system which meets the requirements of standards such as ISO IEC 17020 will provide confidence that requirements will be met, but does not guarantee that the organisation will not make mistakes, only that competence will be assured and errors effectively dealt with and reduced. We will now cover some of the more common ISO standards which address the subject of quality assurance and management. ISO 9001, entitled Quality Management System Requirements. This can apply to any type of organisation in any particular sector. It's very generic in its nature. ISO IEC 17025 applies to calibration and test laboratories, which we'll discuss later. ISO 15189 applies to clinical or medical laboratories, such as in health service laboratories, and is broadly based around the last version of ISO 17025 and would generally be seen as being equivalent. ISO IEC 17065 is to do with product certification, where a product bears some kind of mark or certification label which attests to it being tested properly and being manufactured in a consistent manner. 17024 applies to personnel certification, where the qualification relates to an individual. And of course, finally, we have ISO IEC 17020, which applies to inspection bodies. Firstly, ISO 9001. This is the most widely adopted quality management system standard. In fact, there are over 1 million companies and organisations in only over 170 countries certified to this standard. Originally mainly used in manufacturing, the standard has evolved over time to apply to pretty much any type of organisation: banks, hotels, hospitality, construction, transport and many others. Many countries across the world established their own standards in the second half of the 20th century, which were harmonised by the ISO TC 176 committee to produce the first international ISO 9000 series of standards in 1987. This has subsequently been revised over the years, culminating in the current version of ISO 9001 in 2015. The main requirement document is entitled ISO 9001, Quality Management Systems Requirements. This is the document that specifies the actual requirements that have to be met by an organisation wishing to be recognised or certified to the standard. There is also a document entitled ISO 9000, Quality Management Systems Fundamentals and Vocabulary, which explains the principles on which ISO 9001 is based, together with some vocabulary used in the series of standards. Supporting this is a guidance document, ISO 9004, Quality Management, Quality of an Organisation, Guidance to Achieve Sustained Success, which gives guidance on quality and quality improvement consistent with ISO 9001. An additional guidance document, ISO TS 9002, provides guidance on the intent of the requirements in ISO 9001, with examples of possible steps an organisation can take to meet the requirements. It does not add to, subtract from, or in any way modify those requirements and is non-mandatory, just providing guidance. There are also related guidance standards which cover specific subjects, for example ISO 10012 relating to measurement systems, ISO 19011 giving guidelines on auditing management systems. More information can be found on the ISO website. ISO 9001 and ISO IEC 17020 overlap in content to some extent, so we'll have a quick overview of the constituent parts of ISO 9001. ISO 9001-2015 is based around the PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act principles expounded by Dr. Edwards Deming, basically to plan the process or activity, to follow the plan or the process, i.e. do, to check that the process is doing what it should be doing, and act, to take action to remedy or improve, such as to improve the plan on an ongoing basis. We will start with the customer. As mentioned in the previous module, all quality management standards are aimed at meeting customers' needs and expectations, stated or unstated. ISO 9001 goes further, requiring that the organisation implementing the standard considers any interested parties or stakeholders' needs and expectations. An interested party is defined as a person or organisation that can affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision or activity. These will invariably include customers, but also owners, staff, suppliers, regulators, unions, partners as applicable. The organisation adopting ISO 9001 is required to identify these interested parties and determine their needs and expectations, providing input to the context of the organisation. The scope of application of the quality management system, QMS, is then determined in order to define the envelope within which the quality management system is to be established. The standard then covers planning, the processes needed to meet the needs and expectations, including the support activities required. For example, equipment, personnel and training. Then provides the product or service, i.e. the core business process which we discussed in the previous course module, evaluates the performance of its processes and uses data to improve processes and systems, which is continuous improvement. The output of all of this would be to ensure that the quality of products and or services provided and to achieve customer satisfaction. In the centre there is a circle entitled Leadership, which basically deals with the management aspects. Let us now have a quick look at ISO 17025. This standard started life as ISO Guide 25 in 1978 and through a series of revisions has now become ISO IEC 17025-2017. This standard is structured in a similar way to ISO IEC 17020, but is applicable to laboratories who perform calibration and or testing. This standard also covers sampling, for example the selection and recovery of samples for subsequent testing. An example of this would be a laboratory who conducts drinking water analysis, who may also collect samples from the field and transport them to the laboratory for subsequent analysis. In many cases the sampling activity is covered by ISO IEC 17020, for example recovery of evidence from the crime scene, where the exhibit may be taken from the crime scene under an ISO IEC 17020 management system and analysed by the laboratory under ISO IEC 17025. ISO IEC 17020 also has quite a long history dating back to ISO Guide 39 published in 1983 and culminating in the current standard of 2012. ISO IEC 17020 is unique in that it classifies inspection bodies into three types based upon their impartiality. A Type A body will be one that is totally independent, does not engage in or associate itself with any activities which would conflict with their independence of judgment, for example, not to be involved in manufacture or design of a product being inspected. A Type B body will be one that provides an inspection service to its own organisation and not to an external customer, and requires organisational separation of the inspection function within that body. Finally, a Type C body may not be totally impartial and offer its services to itself or an external party. The inspection body is required to conduct an impartiality risk assessment of its operations and determine which type best fits the organisation. In certain cases, however, the accreditation body who issues the ISO IEC 17020 certificate may have its own requirements which override this. For example, in the UK, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UKAS, mandates that organisations who conduct crime scene examinations would be classified as Type C. It is not intended that one classification is better than another, just to provide transparency to a potential customer as to the manner of operation and independence of the inspection body. We now have a quiz to test your understanding of the principles given in Module 2.